Welcome back to Beyond the To-Do List. I'm Eric Fisher, and this is where I talk to the people behind the productivity. As you listen, you'll learn not only about being more efficient and effective, but also about doing work with meaning and purpose. This week I'm talking to John Bell, the author of Do Less Better. Yes, I know, sounds like I said that wrong, but it's actually called Do Less Better, the power of strategic sacrifice in a complex world. And this whole idea of making strategic sacrifices, doing less so you can do what you choose to do better, being a specialist instead of a generalist. This idea has been something that I've been working on already prior to the point where I read John's book. So, I know you'll like it. Before we get into that conversation, I want to say thank you to Doodle for supporting this episode of Beyond the To-Do List. Doodle is the solution to scheduling a meeting with a group of people. Scheduling a group meeting can be so frustrating because you've got to get back and forth and find out it doesn't work for some person, but it works for everybody else, and then you got to start all over. Doodle is an online scheduling tool that makes it easy to schedule a meeting with one or more people. You don't need to register, so it's very easy to get started. You just schedule a meeting. You select possible dates and times for yourself, invite the people that you want to be part of that meeting, and then they get to check when will work for them. The basic service is free. They also offer personal scheduling profiles called Meet Me. Premium Doodle is available starting at only $39 a year and offers business users additional features such as calendar integration, automatic reminders, and much more. I'm one of the 24 million people using Doodle each month to save time and schedule a lot of different events, including conversations for this podcast. You can get started with Doodle by visiting beyondthetodolist.com/doodle. Well, this week it is my privilege to talk with John Bell, the author of the book Do Less Better. Welcome to the show, John.
Eric, I'm delighted to be with you today.
So, are you familiar with Superman?
Who isn't?
Are you also familiar with the, I guess you could call him a Superman villain, although he's maybe more just misunderstood, Bizarro?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, he's basically Superman, but reverse. So, instead of ice breath, he blows flame. And anyway, he's from a reverse parallel universe or something. I don't know. Anyway, way too much information here. But he talks backwards, so he does kind of almost a Yoda thing, but he means the opposite. And so when I first read the title of your book, Do Less Better, it sounded like something he would say, like, I'm going to do less better, like improper grammatically saying, I'm going to do things poorly. And that is not that's not what the book is about at all. In fact, it's about doing less and doing better.
Absolutely right. In fact, at one point, I wondered whether there should be a comma after less, but the publisher said, "Oh, no. It's got to be simple." And I said, "Well, I can't argue with simplicity.
Exactly.
I'm preaching it."
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the thing is if the comma was there, you're almost. I like it without the comma, and I think the reason being is it is more simple, and I think that you're choosing to do less so you can do those things that you're choosing specifically better than you ever did them before.
Yeah, and perhaps the thing that caught you off guard was the first two words, do less, because that sounds like less work. And do less better is not about doing less work.
For the most part, when I talk to people about productivity, doing less work is never what we're really talking about. But in your case, it means doing what you choose to do better. So let's get into this. This is almost like a productivity 101. And I really think my audience will appreciate a refresh on this. So what does doing less but doing better mean to you?
Okay, let's talk about a paradigm that's been out there for a long, long time, probably since the origins of business, and that is that everyone thinks you have to do more and more to grow. And that has certainly been the case for today's business more than ever. And of course, inherent in that is there's a lot of complexity. The more you do, the more complexity raises its ugly head and basically stifles and stagnates, and if left unchecked, can bring a company to its knees. So what I'm getting at here is the original idea of specialization, and most businesses always started as a specialist. Someone was a shoemaker, or a bricklayer, or a small retailer. And with the mergers and acquisition craze of the 80s, 90s, and still today, you've got bigger and bigger companies, and the opportunity to compete against them seems like it's far more difficult than ever. And my point is that it is not, because specialists still beat generalists. Generalists move slow. Generalists have to worry about many, many more things. So a small to medium-sized company that can specialize in one or maybe two things can win against the giant. And why is that? Fundamentally, they can be more creative, they can be more nimble, and they can have greater know-how in the individual category in which they work. Now, early in my career, I worked for a business that was in 10 different food categories with many brands. None of them had a unique competitive advantage, and we were up against the likes of Kraft and Nestle and Procter & Gamble, companies that at that time were 10 to 20 times our size. We were in red ink, and we decided that ultimately, and this took a lot of soul searching, and it did take a lot of courage, that the only way we could survive was to concentrate on one or two of those categories. So we sold off or closed 8 of the 10 businesses. Now, we didn't do it all at once. We should have. We trimmed her down to 4 businesses and realized that it still was not enough. We were still not focused enough. And then when we concentrated on the coffee business, we actually became better at it than the Krafts, the Nestles, and the Procter & Gambles. Now, how is that possible? Do you really think the CEO of Kraft knows as much about coffee as the CEO of Starbucks would?
Oh, yeah. No, I doubt it.
All right. And Starbucks, yes. And even 25 years ago, that was the case. Even when Howard Schultz only had 15 outlets in the state of Washington. He knew more about coffee. His management knew more about coffee. And within that category, even though it sounds very, very limiting, look at the number of opportunities that are there. And in fact, Nestle have actually pursued one of those in this single serve, Nespresso. You read the book, and I talked about Nespresso in it, and gave Nestle a great deal of credit for innovating, creating a machine that could brew single-serve coffee using pods. And of course, it's the old scenario of you sell the hardware and then you make money on the software.
Right.
But I'll just wrap it up here on the opportunities within that one business. In coffee, it was roasting, it was buying, it was marketing, and it could expand all the way to reusable filters and even single-serve machines. So there's still plenty of opportunity, but it's in a focused area where know-how is greater.
I love this idea of a generalist versus a specialist. And I think when it comes to not just, everyday, work tasks, but also just life tasks in general, I think we feel or take on much more of a generalist mentality when we should be looking to become specialists. What do you think?
Yeah, we inherently think we have to do more and more. Even today's marketers, they forget that the mind is a very, very busy place. And so with social media, there are so many ways to engage with customers, and people generally put out a whole host of benefits for a brand or a service, when really a brand should stand for one thing. And that's really tough for marketers to think about. We did this many, many years ago because I came out of the conventional packaged goods business. And the P&G way was one benefit, not 3 or 4. Sure, Crest toothpaste would stand for many things, but basically Crest toothpaste fought cavities. right? And then then you've got there was a brand called Ultra Bright many years ago. I don't know whether you remember it. It was a toothpaste that made your teeth glisten, shine, white.
Yeah, yeah.
So a single-mindedness is important. Our minds can only handle so much information, and we all want a piece of that customer's mind. So if you're going to cut through, you better have a great point of differentiation.
Well, so how do you suggest that, organizations as well as even, people who are doing too much, how do they cut through? Is there a process or a workflow that you would suggest? And it probably starts with realizing the fact that you're doing too much, right?
Correct. Yeah. And then I think the other thing, Eric, is if you're working in an organization and the leadership doesn't buy into focus, then it's very difficult. And, there's a lot of leaders out there that say we've got to focus, but they don't do it themselves. So it makes it tough down the line. So I would say for the process to work properly at the 30,000-foot corporate strategy level, senior management and the board have to decide which businesses they are going to pursue and which markets. And ideally, focus on the ones that matter most. Now, actually, Procter & Gamble do this quite well. This is a multi-brand, multi-product company, but they do know how – they do prune what they plant. They've sold off many, many divisions. They sold off the food division. They've recently sold off the pet food lines in order to focus more on beauty and some of the other products that have been successful for them for a long time. So at the 30,000 foot level, there's a decision to be made. Okay, now that filters down into the functional areas. Functional meaning sales, marketing, manufacturing, IT, HR. The same kind of thinking. If this is the areas we are focusing on, how does our particular department work within that? Below that is the to-do list. Every employee has a to-do list. So if there's 20 things on there, and I'll be honest here, I mean, there are probably 15 of them that have to be done to keep the company running, right?
Right.
They may be mundane, but you've got to enter orders, just as an example. But there are also items on there that are areas of opportunity and projects. And this is where one has to be very diligent in deciding which to pursue and which to pass on. And a lot of people struggle with passing on an opportunity. Well, what if somebody else goes after it? I say let them have it. I use the analogy of a mountain and then a mountain range. In that mountain range, there are scads of opportunities for companies. But I'd like to climb this one mountain. And I don't care how the people within my company want to climb it. That's their business. That's their autonomy. But I want them climbing that mountain. So in my particular case, that was coffee. And there's the mountain range of other opportunities. Let somebody else have them. I don't mind competitors making money, but the ultimate goal for I think a CEO running a business is that their business has to have competitive advantage, has to lead the way with innovation, creativity, new ideas, new products, and we'll get to the top of that mountain and own it.
And what you're really talking about is quality versus quantity, right? I mean, quality, you can never, your organization or you yourself will never reach the level of quality if you're so concerned on the amount or the quantity that you're producing or putting out.
Couldn't agree with you more. And it works within a company. I mean, we've got a number of people in organizations that are not going to rise to the C-suite. But can they be a craftsman? Can they be a specialist in their own field? If somebody is a purchasing manager, for example, how do you help that person be the best purchasing manager out there? You train them. You offer opportunities to interact with other purchasing people, and you allow them to be a specialist in that particular area. And I think that's motivating for people. They don't necessarily have to keep climbing the corporate ladder. Some people want to do it. Some people are prepared to do it and qualified to do it, but not everybody. So how do you ensure that you've got inspired, motivated employees? And I think specialization is one way to do it.
Not to mention the fact that, resources themselves become much more effective in their usage, because when you're streamlining and you're going for quality on fewer items, then your time, your attention, your energy, your budget even all become multiplied, basically, right?
You've got it. You've got it 100%. And usually, in all cases, small and medium-sized companies don't have the deep pockets of their multinational competitors. So if you can't outspend them, how do you compete against them? I'm suggesting do less better, but I'm also suggesting creativity, nimbleness, ideas, innovation, choosing fewer, better opportunities. And that's good. And you know something? That actually, I didn't put this in the book, and I wish I had, because it's come to me.
It's exclusive.
It always happens. Yeah, that do less better leadership is easier. It's an easier way to lead. Why? Because everybody's on the same page. They know the parameters. So those opportunities, those ideas, those projects that aren't on strategy eventually are never brought to you. People know they're going to be rejected because they're off strategy. So inherent in that is a way to focus the company and the employees in the company.
That's great. I love that idea that, there's almost a pre-built funnel at that point where you just know, oh, this is outside and then we're not saying don't think outside the box, but you've already set up kind of the rubric or the boundaries of, no, this is what we're about. And this idea out here, unless you can bring it into the fold and present it as to why it benefits what we are about, then you can reject it outright. And that's a good thing, because it means you're not wasting time on it.
That's right. And then this word strategic sacrifice becomes part of the modus operandi. Everyone understands it. We accept that we have to pass on things that we don't want to pass on, right? Mm-hmm. But we accept that that's a key to our success. Now, I listened to your interview with Rory.
Yes.
Is it Rory Vaden?
Rory Vaden.
Vaden, yeah. And I really like what he had to say about sacrifice. And it was this, and I made a note of it. He says, taking the easy decision now will cause more problems in the long haul, as opposed to making a tough sacrifice now that will make the longer term better. So early in the game, it is difficult. Later in the game, you're used to that style and that culture. And then you buy into the concept, especially if you're a small to medium-sized operation. Because do less better for large companies is an option. Sure, if they focus, they will certainly improve their performance. But they don't have to, because they have scale and they have clout. And scale and clout can cover up a lot of mistakes. But I think the small to medium-sized companies, do less better is not an option. It's the only option.
Yeah.
That's really the point there.
That's a good point. I like that idea. And even not just the medium, but even the very small, even the solo entrepreneur type people, who I know there's a number of those who listen to this show. They probably are thinking, oh, here's my field. It's big and it's wide and it's open. But what would you say to convince them, hey, you may want to narrow it down a bit? Yeah,
there's this cover your ass mentality, right? With that, if you've got all of these balls up in the air, maybe one will come through for you when something else isn't doing very well. But ultimately, and the proof is that companies who specialize are generally more profitable. They might not be as big, but specialists generally get better margins. Have you ever heard of the law firm Wachtell Lipton?
Not off the top of my head. It sounds familiar, but I can't remember right this second.
Okay, these guys are amazing. They are there's 50,000 law firms in the U.S. And this company is the 63rd largest in the world. It's big. It's 600 million. The largest law firm in the world has 77 offices in 47 countries. So how many offices do you think Wachtell Lipton have?
Oh gosh, I'm sure it's something small.
It is. How small can you get?
Well, one.
You got it.
Oh my gosh.
One office, New York City, and their specialization is mergers and acquisitions, and they are excellent at it. And as a result, they're the most profitable law firm per equity partner in the world. So if you want to hire a law firm for M&A, you go to New York, or they'll send someone to you, and there's no hourly billing. It's a fixed fee. Many years ago, they represented Kmart in there was an unfriendly takeover happening, and Kmart hired them, and it took them 2 weeks to do the job. Kmart paid them $20 million, and they were thrilled to do so.
Wow.
Yeah, I learned about this company in Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, which is great.
Yeah.
And again, I wish I'd read the book before I published my own, because they are just a great example of doing less better. And so is In-N-Out Burger, by the way. I don't know whether you know them. They're big in California.
Yeah, they're big out west. I don't think we have anything close here. But, when I can, I get some.
Here's the thing, Eric. You want a chicken burger? You're not going to get it there. You're going to get a beef burger, conventional hamburger. You'll get fries. You'll get shakes. You'll get soft drink. No desserts. Now, McDonald's has over 100 items on the menu. I know they reached 140, and I know they're trying to cut back. And yet In-N-Out's sales per outlet is just a smidgen less than McDonald's.
Man.
So the proof's in the pudding right there.
Yeah.
When in those two examples, the law firm and the fast food restaurant. Of course, they also deliver on the word fast within the nomenclature, don't they?
Yes, they do.
You've been there. They know how to do it.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we've talked large organizations and medium size. We've talked fast food, which I did not expect. How about you yourself? How have you – there's got to be a parallel here somewhere where that caused you to say, I need to write this book. You lived through the corporate downsizing is not the right word. Let's say refocusing, reinventing even, yeah. And it had to have affected you to the point where you wanted to write this book. How has this trickled down into your day-to-day life?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on it. When I was consulting and spending a lot of time in airplanes and hotel rooms towards the end of my career, I had a lot of time, and my daughter had asked me to write a biography on her grandfather, who was a Second World War pilot on the wrong side. And the story is fascinating. And she said to me, "Dad, if you don't write it, it will die with him." And he was about 84 at the time. He's now 94, still alive. So I wrote it, and I loved writing it. I really enjoyed it. And then I published just enough books for the family. And about a year later, I wanted to write again. And I decided, if I fictionalized this story, if I added sex and murder and revenge and all this exciting stuff, what could I do with it? I could stay with the foundation. So to make a long story short, I wrote it, and then I tried to find a literary agent. And I ran into a fellow in New York. Eric Nelson was his name. And he said, I can give you some advice on it, although it's not my genre. And he did. And then eventually he said, I've got to move on. I've been doing very well selling business books. I said, I've got an idea for a business book. And it's all about this complex world that we live in now. Never has business been so complex as today. So I think there's an idea about focus. And he said, well, there's been a lot of books on focus, John. I said, I know, but the market needs it more than ever. So he said, what's the differentiation? So there you go. There's what's that single point of difference? And I said, I think we could have through this book the common thread that sacrifice in the right places, strategic sacrifice in the right place is the way to find that focus. He said, that's unique. And originally the book was going to be called Kill Your Darlings, but the publisher didn't like it, so we went with Do Less Better. Anyway, so my novel sat on the back burner. So I got into this, and I really felt there was a good purpose in doing it because I think the leaders and managers need it. But I had to stop doing anything on the novel. In other words, searching for an agent, searching for a publisher. And it is sitting now quietly until I've finished the 60, 90, whatever it takes days to publicize this book. And then I will move to it, but I won't work on both at the same time.
Oh, that's the problem that myself and many others that I've worked with have is we're like, okay, I'm working on this podcast, I'm working on this book, I'm working on this online course, we're working on all these things all at once, and they all take forever to get done, and some of them don't even ever get finished because that fractured attention and energy is just all over the not to mention all the other things that take up is kind of.
But even with your podcast, Eric, I mean, you've got probably a list of potential authors you want to talk to. You can't talk to all of them. So right. in your own way of doing less better, you look at what you think that your readers will be interested in, number one, and number two, which of those books is going to fit the best for them, and pass on the rest.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
Well, not to mention the first and foremost question. Sorry, listeners, but what interests me myself?
Well, that's probably similar to your listeners, right?
Yeah,
because that's how you got to this point.
Well, honestly, that's one of the secrets for me, and I don't know if I've ever said this, but if I'm interested, then and it holds my attention, and I'm fascinated by it first, then it becomes less like work. It becomes more like something that I'm passionate about. So then the audience will get what they want as well.
Yeah, it really, really does work wonders, doesn't it? Even in some of the interviews I've had, I haven't been a CEO for a long, long time. But when people ask about those days, it reinstills the passion and the excitement of those days, and a lot of memories come back that I'd actually forgotten about in order to make a point to answer a question. Yeah. So it's great to do, and it's easy to talk to people like you that are equally passionate about this subject. It's fun.
If you were to say you weren't, if you were going to start a new business right now, how would you start the process of deciding what to do? In other words, you wouldn't do a bunch of different things. You'd start off with that one thing. How would you decide that?
Well, let's pick it up where we left off. It would have to be something that I really cared about to start with, number one. Mm-hmm. And then number two is where's the need? Where's the problem? And who is not addressing that problem? And I think if you can find that, then you can be on your way to creating a company that can separate itself from the current incumbents and offer a product or a service. But without problem, there's no solution. Now, having said that, if you are the type that can see the unseen, because if you were talking to Steve Jobs today, he wouldn't answer that way. He'd say, "Look, I can look out into the future, and I know what customers will want. It's not a problem right now. They're not looking for it, but I know when I give it to them, they'll want it." Mm-hmm. And how many products has that company come out with that the market was just shocked? well, where did this come from? Did he talk to consumers? No. It's like Henry Ford once said, if I asked customers, what they wanted for better transportation, it'd say faster horses and a good buggy whip. Nobody thought of the car. He had seen the unseen, automobiles.
So
there's more than one way to skin that cat, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. So it's that problem. It's what you're passionate about. It's finding where that problem that you could fill a need for, and honestly, almost not even seeing if somebody's out there already filling that need, because maybe you can do it better.
Right. I mean, Warby Parker are doing this in eyeglasses, right?
Yes.
This is really great. What they're doing.
Yeah.
And interesting, here's a company that turned in mid-course, because their original premise was that they would only sell online. And now I think they have 10 flagship stores. Not that they want to have 100. It's just that they want to have these big stores in the right markets to showcase their product. Most of the business is still online. It's cool.
Yeah. And for those not familiar, we'll they're not a sponsor for the show or anything, no. But the idea behind it is you can try glasses on at home. They'll send them to you, and you send them right back, and it's awesome. So,
yeah, at a much lower cost.
Yeah,
than the old way, which is a very long distribution system.
Yeah,
that adds costs along the way.
That simplicity and that focus allows them to increase that quality, and even in this case, that the customer service that they've invented for this. I mean, it was unheard of years ago, and then gradually you start to hear about it, and you're like, oh wow, I would have never thought that somebody would be able to focus so much on the quality of the product. And I guess they probably also focus in on the happiness of the customer. So
they do, and even when you go to the website, it's so professional. It's just so interesting to read.
Yeah. Well, John, how can people get a copy of Do Less Better?
Okay, so the book is on all the popular online websites, the Amazons of the world, but also if they want to have a look at some of the details, they can go up to the book's website, which is www.dolessbetter.ca. And in there they can download the introductory chapter, no cost. And if that whets their appetite, go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever. It's on all the online retail sites.
Great. John, thank you so much for being on the show.
Eric, thanks for having me. Had a great time.
I hope this conversation serves as a reminder to you to practice strategic sacrifice and learn to make more focused decisions about what it is you will choose to say yes and no to, and what you will focus on being about. Thanks again to John for talking with me. Make sure you go check out his links to his book in the show notes for this episode at beyondthetodolist.com/89. Thanks again to Doodle for sponsoring this episode of Beyond the To-Do List. Again, I can't tell you how easy scheduling meetings has gotten for the last year and a half or so since I've been using Doodle. I would love for you to try it out. Go over to beyondthetodolist.com/doodle. Again, that's beyondthetodolist.com/doodle. Thanks again for listening. I will see you next episode. Beyond the To-Do List is a proud member of the Noodle.mx Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at Noodle.mx. Learn how to podcast. Theorize over the TV shows Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, and Under the Dome. Laugh with our clean comedy, delve into science fiction and philosophy, learn critical thinking from movie reviews, and more at Noodle.mx.